Friends, welcome to my channel, Creating Essence. My name is Megan. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about homeschooling a child with high-functioning autism. When my son was first diagnosed, just after he turned 2, with sensory processing disorder, I searched and searched and searched and found very little information. And so I started a blog, and that blog, I haven't written on it in years, but it's still there, and it's called My Sensational Square Peg. And I actually have met some really awesome people through it who their child had the same diagnosis, and they too were searching, and they came across my blog, and it was so helpful. And that was my goal, was to just, if I could possibly help one family with information that I couldn't find by just writing about our experiences and what we learned through living, then that's what I wanted to do. And since my son was diagnosed with autism as well, it's been hard finding information about homeschooling children with high-functioning autism. I've found a lot of information for families whose kiddos are more profoundly affected with autism, but my son is not. He is fairly high-functioning. He struggles a lot with impulse control and social indicators and things of that nature. He has some tics and anxiety that he's developed as a coping mechanism to deal with the harsh stimuli. Most people with autism have some level of sensory processing issues. My son is profoundly affected enough by sensory issues that the professionals who have evaluated him on multiple occasions at various ages throughout his nearly 9 years of life have determined that sensory processing disorder is a very valid, separate diagnosis from the high-functioning autism he also deals with. So you might find that a lot of my kind of tips are very sensory geared, because that's just life for us. So if your child doesn't have particularly difficult struggles with sensory processing issues, then this might not be too helpful, but hopefully it will help some people out there. So I put together a little list of the things that I use most often on a day-to-day basis to help my son as we're homeschooling, and things that help our day go more smoothly. Number one would be a routine. Most kids thrive on routine, but kids with autism tend to really need that extra level of predictability. It comes out when you least expect it, because we don't have a particularly strict routine for our day or schedule, but we do have a rhythm, so we kind of go through the same things every day. And I didn't realize how much he had come to rely on those things until things kind of jump out and he struggles with something. For example, I do big bi-weekly grocery shopping trips, which you may have seen in some of the grocery hauls on my channel here. And we just got in the habit of getting bagels from Costco for Saturday morning breakfast the next day. And it just was something we did because we liked, and we don't do a ton of bread around here, and if we do, I usually make it myself. But bagels are something we all really love, so I would get bagels. And one day, our shopping routine was different. We didn't go on a Friday. We decided to put it off until Monday. So we didn't have bagels Saturday morning. And my son came and woke us up and was in a panic and was just stuck in this spot where he was like, where are the bagels? We need bagels for Saturday morning breakfast. It's Saturday morning. We need bagels. Saturday morning breakfast for bagels. And he's not typically someone who most people can even tell that he has autism unless they catch him kind of on a bad day or at home where he tends to be triggered more by things at home. But yeah, if you saw him in that moment freaking out about Saturday morning breakfast, you would think he was Dustin Hoffman straight out of Rain Man. So we do Saturday morning breakfast. When we went on vacation last week, we brought bagels, and when the bagels ran out, we went to a bagel shop nearby. We found one, and we did bagels for Saturday morning breakfast, because that's what we do for Saturday morning breakfast, and it's just easier to not rock the boat. If you just don't trigger them in those ways, and you just have a rhythm that they can depend on that gives them peace of mind. Because one thing that you'll notice with most children with autism, and most people, even adults with autism, is that they just feel a bit of safety and calm in routine, and they kind of feel like there is a right way to do things. And when they get used to something, or there's a rhythm or a routine or a schedule, that is right, and anything else is wrong. And that can be really, really upsetting and just trigger them to no end. And on that note, notice their triggers. We had an amazing occupational therapist when our son had just turned 2 and was diagnosed with sensory processing disorder. And she came to our house 2 to 3 days a week and worked with him and taught us. Because we were just beside ourselves. He was just tantruming and crying, and he was really almost nonverbal. And it was so hard. And she taught us about sensory input, and she taught us about triggers, and she taught us how to notice these things. And it just, I can never, we will always have a very special place in our hearts for our Miss Denise. She turned it around for our family by helping us understand our son and helping our son deal with stimuli and learn to cope with the world around him as a toddler and through the preschool years. And we were so sad when we moved and we couldn't just bring our Miss Denise along with us. But she really got us started amazingly. And if you can, when your child is very young, notice the triggers, notice the things that are bothering them. You can kind of get out ahead of things. Or if they're getting a little older, like our son is almost 9 now, we can know that this thing is a trigger, and we can immediately point out the trigger and say, look, there's this. This is happening. This is why. It's unavoidable, or it needs to happen because of this. But look at the situation. Here's what we can do. Here's how we can handle it, and you are okay. And he might not feel okay, but he trusts us, and he knows that we have his best interest in heart. And it can be very, very difficult for him at times, but he's getting old enough where we can rationalize with him. And that is another point that I have, is to be literal, not metaphorical. We don't even realize how many metaphors we use in a day. Just in general, the English language, the cliches, the things that just come out of our mouth without even realizing it are so metaphorical, and that can be very confusing to a child with autism, especially when you're trying to teach them in homeschooling or even just day-to-day life in correcting them or disciplining them, discussing something. You have to be very literal. We found empathy is something that he really lacks. And he also has impulse control issues. So it's something that just feels like we are constantly doing all day, every day, is saying, look, you did this, yes? Okay, why did you do it? All right, well, for example, yesterday, if you stepped on your brother's foot by accident, would you want him to punch you? No, you wouldn't. And he knows the answer. He knows, no, I wouldn't like that. Okay, so what would have been a better way to handle that? And he knows, tell my brother Aaron, you stepped on my foot. That hurts me. Ouch. something. Teach him how to express himself, because he has the words. He has an incredible vocabulary. But in those moments, ouch, his foot hurts. That sensory input came into his foot because someone stepped on it. And his trigger was look at the source and deck him. Because in his mind, that was just, that will get rid of it, because if I punch him, he's going to walk away. And dealing with those things very literally and putting just over and over and over again these instances. No, you would not want to be punched. You would want someone to say, ouch, Gabe, you stepped on my foot. And give him a chance to move before you punch him in the face, right? You don't realize, I was on a homeschooling board on Facebook yesterday. Someone was talking about how they were struggling to get through to their child whom they suspected was on the spectrum, about lying. And one person laid out this whole elaborate scenario that she gives her children about a mountain, and it's this great big mountain, and it's a mountain of trust, and when you lie, you knock that mountain down, and there's no more trust between us anymore. I'm like, you don't have a kid with autism, do you? Because if I started talking mountains to my son, mountains of trust, his brain would start firing and trust would go out the window. But there would be like, oh, how do you knock down a mountain? Did you do that with dynamite? That would have taken a lot of TNT. Did you drill into the mountain? Did you make a cave? Like, how did you get the dynamite into the mountain? Or did you just, like, how did you do it? Did you have a plane fly into the mountain and blow it up with the fuel power? And leave the metaphors out of it. It just be literal, be direct, and don't expect them to have empathy. Don't expect them to understand representations of things. We use a lot of manipulatives in our homeschooling because we don't have to say these theoretical 5 things and these theoretical 3 things. I can get out my box of stuff and be like, these 5 little dinosaurs sitting right in front of you, and these 3 little raccoons sitting right in front of you. We do a lot of literal, we do a lot of hands-on. And I catch myself. He's getting to the point now where he notices when I'll use a metaphor of some type, and he will catch me and be like, oh, you said this, but that doesn't mean this, that means this, right? So he's getting there, and when he thinks about it, he can pick apart a metaphor. But as far as everyday, like, it's just, I don't make him think that much. I don't expect that of him because that's not how his brain works. And next on my list would be to keep it brief. Keep it brief. Like, a lot of kids with autism can get hyper-focused on something. And when you think of the term hyper-focused, you think like they are so tuned in and they get it and they are soaking it all in. But in reality, what it means is you've got a real short window to give them the information you need, because their brain is going to latch on to something and you don't know what it is, but their brain is going to latch on to some part of what you just said. And then they're just stuck there and they're just honing in. Like the TNT in the mountain, everything about lying and trust goes out the window, and suddenly it's all about, like, in what method are you getting the TNT into the mountain in order to blow it up so that you can actually knock a mountain over? Because a mountain is a giant landform of rock, and you can't just push it over with your hand. You need power, and you need explosive power, and it's enormous, and that's what hyper-focusing means. So keep it brief and let it sink in, and let them respond to you if they need more information on something, some concept that you're presenting them with. And next, I would say change your methods. And I kind of already touched on this, but you have to look at your child and learn with them and be open to trying new things. It's something I see all the time, whether it's in special needs homeschooling or not. Parents just, they get a curriculum and they think this is a great curriculum and they just want to do the curriculum. And they become kind of a slave to the curriculum. They don't just use it however works best for their family or their child. They just want to do this awesome, well-written curriculum. And with autism, their functioning changes every day. If a child is triggered by something that day, they can be in a spiral for minutes, hours, days, weeks. You just don't know when they're going to come out of it when they're triggered. And a lot of times when a child is triggered by something, their focus is shot, and they're just, because they're hyper focused on something else, whatever that trigger was. And you have to be willing to do what it takes in that moment to get it done. When my son was learning to write, especially, a lot of times the tactile sensory input of holding the pencil would be too much on days he was triggered in other ways. My camera's flashing. Battery. He would be triggered so that it just was upsetting for him to touch the pencil. So I would write for him. He would look at things and read them, or I would read them to him, and I would write down the answer. We would just do the most basic, the briefest things on the lesson, and I would fill it out for him. And I think that's where I'm going to end it today because my battery is dying. So I will definitely do a part 2. Please put questions in the comments below if you have them. I would love to put them in the next video. Thank you, friends. Bye-bye.